You might imagine that faced with a large defeat in the 2020 election, Donald Trump's press secretary and senior campaign advisor, Kayleigh McEnany, would be quietly preparing to ride off into the sunset to some media gig, to some consulting gig somewhere. Joe Biden is likely going to end up with 306 electoral votes, just like Donald Trump had in 2016. But unlike Donald Trump, who lost the popular vote by 3 million, Joe Biden is on track to win the popular vote by 5.5, maybe even 6 million votes when all of the counting is done. But it's not stopping Kayleigh McEnany. She will not stop humiliating herself. And we're going to look at some clips today. I'm wondering maybe whether there's a long game that she's playing here. Like maybe Kayleigh has the sense, or she's been told, if you can keep this up, at some point in his next endeavor, Donald Trump is going to give you a really cushy gig. Because quite frankly, I don't know how else we can understand why she's behaving in this way. Maybe I'm trying to apply logic where there is no logic. Let's see what you think after you see these clips. So to start with, last night, Donald Trump and many Republicans were hopeful that Wayne County in Michigan was not going to certify their election results, just that one county. And because the Trump campaign has had no victories so far, speaking, legal victories, they were starting to say, wow, Wayne County won't certify. We won. Here is Kayleigh McEnany cheering it with Sean Hannity last night.
Wayne County canvassers say we cannot certify this election because of these witnesses. They're real people. And one reporter tweeted out, this is the first time in my 20-year history I've ever seen something like this. A county commission refused to certify. It's because for the first time, you have a president fighting for the forgotten men and women in Detroit and Philadelphia and Democrat cities across the nation.
Now, unfortunately for her, these claims about Wayne County were bogus, and within minutes of Kayleigh saying this to Sean Hannity, Wayne County did certify the election as they should have, and Michigan is now a closed book, essentially. Then we go from talking about Michigan to talking about Pennsylvania. As you may have heard, Rudy Giuliani yesterday went over the line from just being Donald Trump's TV lawyer to actually arguing before a court. It reportedly was a huge embarrassment, but here is Sean Hannity saying, I heard Rudy was brilliant in court yesterday.
All right. In Pennsylvania, Rudy Giuliani argued the case today. I've heard from more than a few people that he was absolutely brilliant in his arguments today. What's the status on that?
So the idea of Rudy being brilliant in court at this point is hilarious. And we later heard that Rudy made no sense at all in court yesterday. At one point, Rudy Giuliani apparently raised the idea that some kind of mafia-like organization stole the election for Joe Biden. In court, Rudy Giuliani brought this up, and it was reportedly a legal embarrassment for Giuliani. Let's continue. Here is Kayleigh McEnany holding up papers again. It's almost a requirement now. If you go on TV to argue that Joe Biden stole the election, you have to hold up affidavits. And Sean Hannity mentions this and says, Kayleigh, show them how the pages aren't really blank, like some people said.
These papers, these affidavits, 234 pages of sworn affidavits under penalty of perjury. These
by the way,
from
Kayleigh,
one county.
What did CNN say about when you held them up on this program? Didn't they accuse you of holding up blank sheets?
That's right. They did about a 10-minute monologue saying these were blank. They're not blank. In fact, these pages of paper from one county were the reason that you had a county-level Wayne County canvasser say we cannot certify this election because of these witnesses. They're real people.
Now, of course, they did certify, and the issue isn't whether the pages are blank. It's that the stuff on the pages is absolute and complete nonsense. So that was last night. I think that last night she was senior campaign advisor on the Sean Hannity program. Now, this morning, Kayleigh went back on Fox News, this time on Fox and Friends. And today she was no longer Trump campaign senior advisor. Today, she was White House press secretary, and host Brian Kilmeade clarifies that this is a game they play.
Thanks so much, Griff. Meanwhile, let's bring in Kayleigh McEnany. She's functioning with us today as the White House press secretary.
So today she's White House press secretary on Fox News. Remember, last week on Fox and Friends, she was not White House press secretary. Last week on Fox and Friends, she was Trump campaign senior advisor. So when they asked her questions about what does Trump believe about this or that last week, she said, oh, that really would be a question for the White House. which, of course, she is the spokesperson for the White House. But last week, she was not appearing in that capacity. The question here, it's completely Kafkaesque is the way I would describe it. Here, Kayleigh was asked about Donald Trump canceling his Thanksgiving trip to his resort in Florida. And Kayleigh frames it as he's hard at work. Now, the truth is Trump is in a bunker mentality. He's not being seen in public. Maybe he'll take questions today. We've not seen him take questions for weeks at this point in time. But Kayleigh says he's just so hard at work, he's going to stay at the White House.
So, Kayleigh, we know the president and Melania, the first lady, are going to celebrate Thanksgiving there at the White House. And normally they go down to Mar-a-Lago. I know they're going to pardon the turkeys. Why they decide to stay in D.C. this year?
Well, the president's hard at work. He's hard at work on COVID, among other issues, drawing down our number of troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, bringing our men and women home. He's hard at work, and so he's staying here at the White House, and it will be a lovely Thanksgiving for him and the First Lady here in the White House.
All right. Do you think we'll hear from the president soon?
Perhaps. That's up to President Trump. Sometimes he'll make the decision to come out on any given moment, but I'm sure you'll hear from him at the right moment.
Now, Donald Trump has not been hard at work. When you look at Donald Trump's schedule this week, you see that he has had nothing on his schedule other than golf and lunch with Mike Pence. And it's been weeks since he's taken any questions from the media. Just a couple more clips. Here, Kayleigh dismisses the public health guidelines about slowing the spread of coronavirus as Orwellian when they bring up at Fox and Friends the fact that we have cartoonishly high numbers of coronavirus cases.
But we know all across the country, Kayleigh, cases are spiking, unfortunately. And this is the week before Thanksgiving when families are going to be together. And there are a number of governors who are suggesting, look, you don't need to be in a big group, particularly if people are outside your bubble. What do you think of these suggestions and guidelines some of the governors have given in advance of this, because it is a super contagious disease?
Yeah, I think a lot of the guidelines you're seeing are Orwellian. Let me start by saying the CDC has put out considerations as we prepare to go about Thanksgiving, about socially distancing, wearing masks, doing what you can. There's a whole list, a page of very good considerations. And in that, they say we're not recommending a certain number of people, but we are giving considerations that you should put in place.
It's Orwellian now to do what every sensible country is doing. That's really something. And then here, Kayleigh McEnany continues talking about a second Trump administration as if we're just weeks from Donald Trump being sworn into a second term.
A stockpile that was left empty by Obama Biden that he's filled up since then. He's left an infrastructure in place where COVID can be handled. And we believe that we will do so going forward in a second Trump administration.
All right.
Okay. And I mean, yeah, there's not much else to say about that. And then lastly, of course, White House press secretary Kayleigh McEnany will not commit to a peaceful transfer of power.
If the president doesn't win and Joe Biden it's proven that he is the elected president, what happens with the transfer of power? Will it be peaceful?
Look, this president has always said he will engage in a peaceful transfer of power if the facts bear out that way. But the president believes, and so too do many others, that if every legal vote is counted, he will remain president. He's pursuing litigation, but this president always wants what's in the best interest of our country.
So day after day, another embarrassment, another humiliation. And I do hope that once Joe Biden selects a press secretary for his administration, the relationship between press secretary and the country will normalize. It's been hysterical and histrionic during the Trump administration. It was that way with Sean Spicer. There was somebody in between. Oh, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. How could I forget? And now with Kayleigh McEnany. It's been absolutely ridiculous. And hopefully we'll see something a little bit more normal during the Joe Biden administration. Follow us on Instagram for more on this and other stories. I'm on Instagram at david.pakman, and you can also follow the show at David Pakman Show. If you love feeding your intellectual curiosity, but you're always struggling to find the time, check out one of my all-time favorite apps called Blinkist. Blinkist lets you consume an entire book on your way home from work. They take thousands of popular nonfiction books, condense each one into text or audio that you can get through in just 15 minutes, and you get all of the important core ideas and information from that book. It's perfect if you don't have enough time to do all the reading you want to do, or if you just want to sample a book before you buy the entire thing. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.